right, welcome back to another episode of the Karter Cast. I'm your host, Karter Baughan. With me, as always, Connor Sparrow. And with us again for another preview. Dylan, you're back. We just did the SEC one recording at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, Wednesday, August 2nd. We are doing the Big 10 today, as you can see on the episode preview, the description, whatever. Kind of the same thing as last time. This one's going to be a lot shorter than the SEC one. Not as much to talk about because guess what? The Big 10 stinks, Dylan. The Big 10 kind of stinks.
They stink compared to what? That's the question. Because you're talking about the pack,
the ACC,
it's compared to the powerhouse ACC.
I think like the MAC is like up here, and then the Big Ten's like right here. Let's be honest.
Now you're just being stupid. Now you're not being serious, and no one's going to take this seriously because of that comment.
We're a bit podcast.
Let's entertain that comment for a second. Big Ten compared to the SEC. You got Georgia and Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State. Fair?
Fair is equals?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Tennessee, Penn State. Fair?
I think that's fair.
Yes. Everybody,
fair?
I'll help you out.
Okay.
Yes, fair. When you go down from there, it's really the same. Florida's just as good as Maryland. Kentucky's just as good as Minnesota. Iowa, LSU, same thing.
They'll have the same record, but they're not as good.
Yeah, I don't think Iowa's on the same tier as an LSU. I think that's a little out there.
Because they get to play
This
the
year
Big
they
Ten.
are.
No.
They get to play the Big Ten, so their record's not real.
You can only play what's on your schedule. Like you can't.
Okay.
You can't just start playing random games.
Let's roll into this thing.
Why
gonna do
does
the odds real quick? Oh, go ahead.
Why does Michigan only have 8 games on the schedule? Oh, the first 4 without Harbaugh. I forgot. Sorry.
Yeah, he had to simulate those games. He's in NCAA 14.
As a North Carolina alum right here, cheating and any type of violation of the NCAA rules, I am completely against and could never even fathom. So shame on Michigan men everywhere.
As a Duke basketball fan, a school who has never ever bought players, done anything remotely like that.
By the book.
I can't. Yeah, it's just not okay, Jim Harbaugh. It's not okay.
Parties at a fraternity house, maybe in like 2006. Never.
Never.
I said Duke basketball, buddy.
Oh, we're not a lacrosse podcast, huh?
And also, they were clean. What do you mean? They were clean.
You're right. A very good 30 for 30. One of my favorite 30 for 30s ever.
One of the best 30 for 30s for sure. All right, let's roll into this. Odds win the Big Ten. Ohio State is the favorite on a lot of books. It depends where you're looking. Ohio State plus 165 is the consensus. Michigan plus 180. Penn State 6-1. Wisconsin 8-1. Iowa 12-1. Minnesota, Illinois 30-1. Nebraska 60-1. Maryland 83-1, and the rest of them are plus 10,000 or higher. Ridiculous odds. Northwestern might be plus 1 million by the time week 2 rolls around. But let's start things off. Let's talk about the 2 top dogs, Michigan, Ohio State. Obviously, Dylan, you're a Michigan fan. Connor and I are. We're loyal to Michigan, but
we ride.
We see the flaws. We do. We see the flaws.
What are the flaws?
Let's start with the Michigan Wolverines, Dylan. Tell us the flaws. Tell us why you believe in this Michigan team, why you genuinely believe they're probably going to be national champions, don't you? Don't lie.
I do, and we talked about it before we even started. I hate being the favorite. Like, we're favored against Ohio State. That doesn't bring me – like, I like being a touchdown underdog. That is more fun. No one expects you to win. But we're returning a lot of guys. J.J. McCarthy proved himself last year. He had moments 2 years ago when Cade McNamara was starting that, you could have been like, maybe he's not the guy. So we found out he is the guy. He has very high upside. He can run. He can throw the ball. Everybody was doubting that he could throw the ball down the field. Turns out he can do that. And we are returning a lot of our offensive and defensive players. Like Blake Corum's coming back. After the leg injury, he really had no reason to. I guess if he wanted to prove that he could, to NFL scouts, that he could run after the injury, maybe. But
maybe he came back because of something. I don't know why Harbaugh got suspended 4 games. I don't know. Maybe something along those lines.
You want to talk about the world's most expensive cheeseburger? 4-game suspension. Are you serious? And that's a whole
so
other beast in itself. And I understand that he got suspended because he lied. Like, you shouldn't lie about that stuff. But in the grand scheme of things, lying about a cheeseburger is, there's a whole lot worse things going on, I'm sure.
I've lied about plenty of cheeseburgers. When Alexis asked me, Connor, what'd you have for lunch? I had a grilled chicken salad. Yeah, I did not have a McDouble. I cannot attest to having a McDouble for lunch.
Did you drink soda today? No, I had plenty of Kirkland signature water.
And there you go, Connor. You're suspended for 4 games. You can't watch the first 4 games of the college football.
I'm suspended for the first 4 recaps for the Karter cast. I'm out of here.
But I will say, I do think Michigan's going to be good. I think Ohio State's going to be fine. I know we're talking about the 2 big dogs first. But in terms of winning the Big Ten, I'm looking at the odds here, and you went through them. It really drops off at Iowa, I think. I think Iowa's the last team on this list that actually has a chance, and that's really just because of their flawed playoff or their flawed champion system with the divisions. So it'll be interesting. I don't know if we want to dive into individual teams or if you guys have any picks for who's going to win the Big Ten, but
we can start with the Big Ten. I mean, I was talking about the first 2 because I feel like all of us are going to pick either Ohio State or Michigan. I'll roll into this. I told you guys before this I have one of my favorite win totals of the year going into this thing. Dylan, I give you a lot of crap with Michigan stuff, but Michigan over 10.5 wins. Their win total's at 10.5. Easiest bet on the board. They have 1 game this year. They have 1 game. Yes, Penn State could be a difficult game. Ohio State is always going to be a difficult game, rivalry game. Everything else should be a cakewalk.
Maryland's a little spicy, Karter.
Maryland's the only one it's a look-ahead game, but like we said, remember last year, the Rutgers game, it was first half, you're like, what is going on here? And then all of a sudden they win by like 30 points. Like, they're going to be fine. They'll have a couple close games where they don't come out strong, but I think Michigan runs the table this year. I think they go 12-0, and I think they're going to win the Big Ten too. I love this Michigan team. Blake Corum is a decent Heisman bet. I know we talked about running backs not always winning it, blah, 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 the Bama running back thing when we did the SEC thing, but Blake Corum's back, J.J. McCarthy. Harbaugh's suspension is going to be absolutely meaningless. They have 4 easy games to start out the season, all at home. They have such an easy schedule. I just worry when they get to the college football playoff, they haven't played that top talent yet, and then they might get punched in the mouth by an SEC team. But this Michigan team's legit, man.
By TCU.
I don't even hate them to win the national title.
Oh, really? We're talking national title.
Wow.
They're good, man. Yes, and also they have a storyline too. I feel like every championship team, like Georgia last year, comeback season, the LSU team, they were like the greatest show on the greatest college football team I've ever seen. And Alabama, kind of the revenge coming back with Mac Jones. They have the story of revenge coming back from that awful TCU loss. Like, that Georgia game made it way worse. They have the storyline. They have the revenge. Harbaugh's suspension. You guys remember the Brady Deflategate suspension? Patriots came back and won the Super Bowl that year. Like, this gives them a little bit of chip on their shoulder. Harbaugh's going to be pissed off. They're going to be ready to roll. I cannot wait for that Week 5 game at Nebraska with Matt Rule, and I hope Michigan wipes the floor with Nebraska. I hope Michigan wins 63-0.
I want to follow that real quick. That's my pick too, Karter. I have Michigan to win the Big Ten this year. Like you said, easiest schedule in the nation. I see here 5th in the nation returning production. I love Blake Corum. Donovan Edwards is back too. I think McCarthy's going to take a step forward this year. Here's the thing. Win total's 10.5. I think they're going to beat Ohio State. I think they will beat Ohio State. You think they're going to go 12-0. That means they can have a flub game. They can have a game where they come out flat and they maybe drop to a Maryland. They maybe drop to Penn State. I still think they're going to beat Ohio State. That'll still put them at 11 wins. So even if you don't like them to win the conference, I think over 10.5 is a pretty safe bet.
I'm nervous about the Maryland game, and then I hadn't really noticed until we looked at the schedule here, like having to play at Penn State and then sandwiching Maryland in there in between Penn State and Ohio State
on the road.
Maryland,
with
I'm going to say his name wrong, so I'm just going to say Tua's little brother. But Tua's little brother, he's been really good the last 2 years, so it's an interesting situation. But there's no doubt that the talent's there. It's just a matter of can they execute, and they lost a couple guys, but it'll be interesting. I'm excited for it.
moving back, like talking about the schedule real quick, the other huge thing about this Michigan schedule is, yes, it's very easy, and then they're hard games. It's at Penn State, but it's a noon kickoff, or it's like 11 a.m. Central kickoff, or it's at Penn State, so it'd be Eastern time. So it's a noon kickoff. You're not having to play, a whiteout night at Penn State. That's a different story. Noon kickoff, yeah, it's never going to be easy against Penn State, but that's a huge game changer getting to play at noon.
I agree.
And they usually do save the whiteout. They usually do the whiteout against Michigan because I think they're alternating between Michigan and Ohio State. So, like, if they're home against Michigan, they're away against Ohio State. So you're right. It's going to be a different atmosphere. It'll be interesting. We'll see. But, man, I hope they're good. That's the one championship I want. Like, if I could get that one, it'd all be over.
I think they're going to make the college football playoff. Kind of going off the Ohio State point of this, why I also like Michigan so much is Ohio State has a lot of question marks. This is going to be the Ryan Day prove-it year. Ryan Day kind of walked into a great situation with Urban Meyer, having all these stud quarterbacks, these stud recruits. Now it's his guys. Now it's his time to show, hey, I'm a legit coach. If he loses this Michigan game, Ohio State can go 11-1. But if they lose that Michigan game, I wouldn't be surprised if he was let go.
Weren't we talking about this last year? I think we said the same thing last year.
Yeah, well, talking about this upcoming year, correct?
Right, I'm saying, I think we said the same thing last year. Man, he should maybe be on the way out. Will he get fired in the offseason after that Michigan game last year? I feel like we touched on that in our little recap shows. I don't know about Ohio State, man. A lot of question marks, like you said. 10.5 is the win total. Do I see 2 losses? I see a loss to Michigan. Could they flub up against Notre Dame? I know we're going to be high on Notre Dame. I know, Karter, you love Sam Hartman to win the Heisman. Spoiler, that's 2 losses right there. I think they could flub up against Maryland, too. I'm high on Maryland this year. So that is potentially 3 losses right there. They only need 2 to cash the under here on the win total.
At Notre Dame, too. At Notre Dame. That is huge.
And that's coming off 3 cupcakes. They play 3 cupcakes before that Notre Dame game.
And they almost lost to Notre Dame last year at home with their quarterback. There's still a question mark at quarterback for Ohio State. And also, Notre Dame's going to be way better than they were last year. They have a legit quarterback in Sam Hartman who doesn't have to run that stupid mesh offense at Wake Forest. He gets to play. I'm so excited for the Notre Dame team. That's different. Ohio State, like you mentioned, Connor, if you don't like them to beat Michigan and they still got to play Penn State. Then after that, it's pretty much everything.
Well, here's the thing, Karter. If you think they're going to lose to Michigan, there's 1 loss. And then between Notre Dame, Maryland, and Penn State, you're telling me one of those won't be a loss? Maybe even Wisconsin if they come out slinging. I'm high on Wisconsin this year. One of those 4 games really could be a loss.
I'm not willing to bet the win total over, or the win total under or over, but I'm not confident in this team. The quarterback question mark is too big for me.
Yeah.
And that's when Fields left. So I remember it was 2 or 3 years ago, Brian, guest of the show, had his own podcast, and he had me on, and I said, Fields is gone. We have this guy, CJ Stroud, coming in that at the time, no one knew anything about him. And it's like, what are you supposed to do when you have a question mark there? And the thing about Ohio State is they do always have the receivers. So if they have somebody that can put the ball in the vicinity, usually they make it work. But when C.J. Stroud took over at the starting position, their first game of the year was to Minnesota, and they probably lose that game if I forget his first name, but his last name was Ibrahim. He was a running back, got injured in the second quarter. They probably lose that game. They lost to Oregon week 2. So there is a big question mark there, and it's worth asking, Kyle McCord, how many passes did you say he had? I mean, he didn't have more than 20 or 30 last year. And they were all against Toledo. I mean, it's just a big question mark. And it's weird. It's actually funny to think that this would be Quinn Ewers' year if he would have stayed, probably. He would have been the starting quarterback. So kind of fumbled there. But
yeah, and the other thing is, we talked about this in the Georgia preview when we were talking about them and their quarterback situation. The one thing Ohio State does have is they have 3 cupcakes to start out to really figure out the quarterback situation, get their feet wet. They play Indiana, Youngstown State, and Western Kentucky. Those should be easy wins, no problem. Get the quarterback's feet wet. But at Notre Dame is going to decide their season. These early games really are so pivotal for these college football teams. Like very rarely does a team lose early on and then finish out the rest of the season on top. You kind of see it like FSU last year maybe, but 9 times out of 10 they usually kind of fumble down and end up like 9-3, 8-4.
There's a good chance after that Notre Dame game we come out of that matchup saying, wow, there's some real holes in this Ohio State team. Here's some flaws. Other teams are probably licking their chops after that Notre Dame game. And it could be wrong. We could be wrong. Ohio State could come out and steamroll them. But I think that's a very, very big chance of them getting punched in the mouth right there, at least early on.
And keep in mind, they played Notre Dame last year, and Notre Dame kept it pretty close for most of the game, and that was with Stroud. So I know we're not doing individual games, but I've already taken Notre Dame for that week. I think FanDuel offered it. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Ohio State to figure it out, but I've said from the time, like, everybody wants to give Ryan Day crap for not beating Michigan the last couple of years, but he is one of the best coaches I've seen at making halftime adjustments for the most part. And, you know, I think he'll be able to do that. So we're not going to see a huge down year, but I even said it on the SEC show. Like, the question marks at quarterback don't bode well with me. I don't like taking a chance on those.
You mentioned the wide receivers. Obviously, they have Marvin Harrison Jr. coming back. But what scares me with him is that's everybody's real sexy Heisman pick that's not a quarterback. They're like, Marvin Harrison Jr. at great odds. But if you don't know the quarterback, how can you really bet on him?
It's a great you bring that up because it made me think of something. I do worry that, well, I don't worry. I actually would rejoice in this. But Marvin Harrison Jr., if things aren't going well early, he could very well pull a Jackson Smith and Jigba and just say, "Hey, he's already proven himself.
Yeah,
he does not need to play. Right? He's going to be a first round draft pick. So he could kind of pull one of those moves and be like, oh, injured, not going to play for the rivalry game, not going to play in the bowl game. I mean that's very well in the cards. So.
It is one hamstring tweak away.
Yeah.
I'm looking. You mentioned how FanDuel had those odds on the Notre Dame Ohio State game. I know we said we're not doing individual games, but Notre Dame plus 8.5.
I think that's the number I got was 8.5.
That is insane.
Months ago, I think.
At Notre Dame, that's too many points. But that's besides the point. Go ahead, Dylan.
It's worth noting too. Their defense has been so bad. I think someone made a note and he ranked 128th in red zone defense last year. I mean. They went out last year and got the Oklahoma State defensive coordinator. I can't remember the name, but I thought he was a great hire. He ran a great defense at Oklahoma State in 2021, and we saw nothing of that this year. I mean, nothing. That defense, it wasn't good.
Yeah, 100%. But that's kind of it, really, on the Ohio State-Michigan front. Like I mentioned before, my favorite win total out of the Big Ten is Michigan over 10.5 wins. Easiest schedule, and I like them to win the Big Ten. I'm not going to bet it, but I think they win the Big Ten. I think they cakewalk through this thing. Chip on their shoulder with the Harbaugh suspension, losing that TCU game last year, everybody returning, revenge season, Carolina basketball 2016 going into 2017 kind of feel like it really
Peep
does
the poster.
have that feel.
Peep the poster behind me.
But let's move on. This is where we get a little nitty and gritty. This is where we get unders games. This is where we get it's 35-mile-per-hour winds. It's raining. You don't throw the football. You only run the football. 1940s football. We're talking Iowa right now. We have Iowa. Dylan, I think you love the Hawkeyes.
I do. And last year, obviously, their issue was the offense. They couldn't get anything going. Their defense was amazing. I don't even have on hand how many points they allowed last year, but it wasn't a lot. And they added J.J. McCarthy and Eric All, who was Michigan's tight end. And we saw with Cade McNamara that he wasn't, how do I say it? He wasn't going to go out and astonish anybody. He could make the throws, but he didn't turn the ball over. He took care of the ball, and that is really important for Iowa because last year they couldn't do anything. It was their defense that was keeping them in games, and as an underbetter, it was amazing. But I'm high on Iowa, and we were even looking through their schedule. Their win total's 8.5. I don't see. I have to look through. I mean, they probably lose to Penn State. I could see them only losing to Penn State. Like, legitimately, that's Iowa's upside. So I would take their over 8.5 win total, but also I think they're plus 250 to win the Big Ten West, and that's. I don't think they're at the caliber of the Buckeyes or the Wolverines. So I wouldn't say they would win the conference. But to win their division, I'm just double checking here. Big Ten West, yeah, 250. I would take that too because I think they're better than Wisconsin. They're not worse than Wisconsin.
I like Iowa a lot. Like when you roll through the schedule, you hear Iowa, and all you can. I think everybody has that bad taste in their mouth last year of seeing those 6-3 games. But the thing is, their defense. They return a lot of the defense. They ranked first in defensive touchdowns. They had like 7 defensive touchdowns and only had 7 passing touchdowns last year. They get rid of the quarterback, new quarterback coming in, like you mentioned. Like the offense sucked, obviously, but the defense was elite. And if they can just make that offense an average college football offense, rank in the 60s, that's 9 wins. They went 8-5 last year. They're 8.5. Like you mentioned, they don't play Ohio State. They don't play Michigan. At Penn State's a brutal one. And at Iowa State's always going to be a tough game, rivalry. At Wisconsin's a tough one. But even if they lose all 3 of those, you're still at 9 wins.
We're talking about Iowa's defense, and I just looked it up. The second least amount of opponent points scored per game, 13.3. And a lot of that defense is coming back. So you add those little pieces on offense, I think that things start to fall. And Eric All, he didn't play last year. I think he was injured, maybe. And Michigan also got 2 other tight ends that ended up being okay. But he was a high quality tight end before I think in 2021. So it's going to be interesting. I like them to win the West.
I'll bounce off this real quick. I'm on DraftKings right now, so the win total is actually an even 8 on DraftKings right now, which means if they win 8 games, you push and you get your money back. A little juiced, minus 145, but I'm looking over the schedule. I mean, I agree with you. I think Penn State's probably a loss, and then I'm high on Wisconsin this year. Spoiler, that might be a loss. Even then, that's only 2 losses. That's 10-2 right there. So.
And Iowa State. Let's say they lose that one at Iowa State.
It's still 9-3, yeah. I agree. I like the win total. I like the win total for Iowa. I do like the win total. I'm not going to enjoy watching them very much, but if they win some money, then so be it.
That's the best. It's nap time.
I can forecast. I can forecast right now. We're going to see a lot of Iowa in the podcast parlays this year from Dylan. I just have like a little feeling in my brain right now.
I can tell you exactly what's going to happen with this Iowa team is they're going to start off 3-0. They're going to have a nice record. Let's say they beat Penn State. They have that big upset against Penn State, big win. They beat Michigan State, Purdue. They're rolling in. And then, they got like the number 4 ranking in the country and everyone's super high on them. Then they put out a stinker against Wisconsin. And then they just stroll along. 5 wins. Minnesota at home. Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, at Nebraska. That's such an easy way to close out your schedule. And let's say you have a couple stinkers early on in the season. You won't have any expectations on you, and all you got to do is get to 10 wins, and then you're free. Then you're probably in the Big Ten championship game. So I like the Big Ten West division winner at plus 250. I'm just going to take Iowa win total over 8.5.
Yeah, that's my play as well. I like the win total more than I like the division just because I'm big on Wisconsin this year, which we can go over in a second. But 8.5 wins, man, it just doesn't seem like the right number for this Iowa team.
Connor, you're high on Wisconsin.
Yeah, I am. Transition a little bit here. So they're plus 130 to win the Big Ten West. I don't hate that bet. I know we just praised Iowa a lot, but Wisconsin, their win total is 8.5. I love that even more. And I'm looking on DraftKings right now. Let's see. Wisconsin's win total, 8.5 minus 145. So a little bit juicy. Take the juice, though. Here's why. Phil Longo's in at OC from UNC. I'm very familiar with his game. Had a lot of success with Sam Howell and Drake May, these high-powered offenses. I'm sure everyone remembers the Sam Howell year with Daz Newsome and De'Ami Brown. This is a rebrand for Wisconsin. You think of Wisconsin, you think ground and pound. You think, let's play some gross football. Hey, Graham Mertz, if you step back to pass, everyone's terrified. They're bringing in Tanner Mordecai, quarterback from SMU. Let me read you a couple stats here. 3,500 plus yards. This is SMU, but 3,500 plus yards over the last 2 years with touchdown interception ratios of 39-12 and 33-10. Those are pretty good numbers for a quarterback coming in. He's not afraid to throw the ball. Phil Longo is going to gunsling it down the field. We saw him do it at Carolina. This is going to be an exciting team. And man, they got their top 3 linebackers back this year. I'm looking at their schedule, guys. Not seeing a lot of losses on this Wisconsin schedule, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. I think they start out an easy 5-0. Maybe they lose to Iowa. They'll lose to Ohio State for sure. That's only 2 losses. That's all I see. End of the schedule's a cakewalk. Indiana, Northwestern, Nebraska all in a row.
I agree with you there because the schedule, like you said, looks pretty easy. These Big Ten teams will always put up stinkers against like the Nebraskas or Minnesotas randomly, and you're like, oh wow, that sucks. I lost that money line parlay with Wisconsin in it.
Yeah.
What scares me about Wisconsin every year, and maybe like you mentioned with the rebrand, this doesn't matter, is that whenever there's even slight expectations on them, they always fumble.
That's fair. Also, Braylon Allen and they have a great 1-2 tandem at running back. They got both their top rushers back. Braylon Allen's a good running back. I've seen, I might be a little Carolina bias here. I've seen Phil Longo with weapons, and it leads to production. It does lead to production, and I think they're gonna have some shootouts this year. So there might be some early Wisconsin overs in the podcast parlay. But I love their over 8.5 wins. It's a little juice right now. That's one of my favorite bets in the conference. Don't hate them to win the Big Ten West at plus 130, but you guys kind of talked me into Iowa, so I'll probably just stay with the win total here.
You kind of talked me into Wisconsin.
Yeah, he talked me into Wisconsin too. I went into this fully being like, oh yeah, Iowa over Wisconsin no matter what. But I think both of them can be 9-3, 10-2.
Yeah,
it's especially like the fact that Wisconsin doesn't have to play Michigan. That's pretty huge. I can't remember if Iowa does or not, but
Iowa doesn't have to play Michigan or Ohio State.
That is why I would maybe stick with Iowa in the division just because of the schedule.
Yeah, that's a good point. But you convinced me on Wisconsin because going into this, I had no clue about them. I knew that Mertz was gone. So I everything made sense to me.
I think it's going to be exciting, and they're not going to be slouches on defense. I mean, Wisconsin's usually known for that ground and pound offense and then tough defense. So I don't think they're going to let up a bunch of points.
Let's move on real quick. Does anybody have anything on Penn State? My only thing is, yes, their defense is great. I just don't, again, it's kind of like Ohio State. I don't know the quarterback position, and if I don't know the quarterback of your team going in, I can't put any faith behind you.
I've seen some people have Penn State as their long shot to win the conference bets. I think you can do better. I think you can do better than Penn State to win the conference.
I agree. The defense is always going to be good. Penn State is kind of known for that, and James Franklin, he's a unique case because he has a lot of seasons with 8+ wins, but yet everybody's calling for his job. And it's well, when you're in a you got to play Ohio State and Michigan, sometimes a good Michigan State team every year. 8-win seasons are not that bad.
But 8-win seasons in the worst Power 5 conference. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that right, Karter?
No comment. I plead the fifth.
You put Penn State in the Pac-12 and they're 4-8.
No, they're not. I'm not saying that. They're 6-6.
But I think they're going to be good. They'll probably have 2 losses. It'll probably come to Michigan and Ohio State. They might beat Ohio State this year.
They're going to put up a stinker. I think they beat Michigan or Ohio State, and I think they always lose that dumb noon game on middle of October Saturday. It's weirdly cold outside in Penn State, and you're like, wait, they're in triple overtime right now?
Maryland.
Illinois?
Or Maryland. Maryland is a good one.
Maryland. November 4th at Maryland. And, that's a perfect example. It's going to be a noon kickoff. You're not going to think about it. People are going to throw Penn State in their money line parlays without thinking, and then, bam, just slap in the face. Tagovailoa or whatever, however you pronounce his name.
Tolia Tagovailoa. Yeah. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that sounds right. I can't pronounce names to save my life. You know that, Connor.
I do.
But yeah, I'm staying fully away from Penn State. I don't want anything to do with them. I don't want.
Same here.
If they're good, great. If they're bad, I don't care. I don't feel comfortable putting my money either side on them. I would say they go 9-3.
I have a very meh view of Penn State. And maybe just because I'm used to Trace McSorley and Sean Clifford being the quarterback for those teams, but I think of Penn State and it's just meh.
Yeah.
No, meh. That's how I feel about this entire conference, but you know how it goes. Real quick, let's talk about the other people in the Big Ten. Illinois, they lose their quarterback. They lose a lot. They had an elite defense last year. They were third in turnover margin and all this. 6.5 wins. They went 8-5 last year. They're going to be 5-7, 6-6. Really make a bowl game.
It's a stay away from me. I had Illinois written down at first, and the more I looked into it, it's I don't trust either side of this. So I'm staying away from that one.
Dylan, anything on Illinois?
Nothing. Lost their quarterback, lost their star running back, lost their cornerback, Devin Witherspoon. He was a beast, and I think he got drafted by Seattle. So it's a lot of question marks there. Not enough for me to have an opinion.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stay away from that one. Michigan State.
I'm going to fade Mel Tucker to Michigan State here. I'm going Michigan State under 5.5. Here's a quick analysis of why. Like you said, they lose Peyton Thorne at quarterback. Not a clear-cut quarterback there right now. Offensive line only returns 42% of total snaps from last season. They lost 3 of their top 4 tacklers from a defensive unit that ranked 115th on third downs. And they only have a few games at home that I see them winning. The schedule is not great. I like their under 5.5 here. I mean, I know people are going to be like, oh, this is too low. Like, they're going to win 6-7 games. I don't buy it. Too much production loss. Too many question marks. Give me Michigan State under 5.5. It's gross. Hold your nose, but here we go.
I see 4 wins on the schedule. You see Central Michigan, you see Richmond, you see Rutgers, and you see Indiana. But at some point, we keep writing these teams off randomly. Like at some point, Indiana and Rutgers, they have to win a conference game or two. They're going to knock someone off.
Right.
And why not a Michigan State? So
right.
I agree with you there. I'm going to stay away from it because I just don't know.
It's fair. That's one of my hold your nose plays. Go ahead, Dylan.
You want to talk about getting fleeced. That contract they gave Mel Tucker, biggest ripoff I've ever seen. They gave him like $10 million a year. It was insane. And they signed him for like 10 years or something. I mean, he had a really good year in 2021. He had a great running back that he could build the team off of. He doesn't have that anymore. And Peyton Thorne was an average quarterback, and they even lost him. So
yep.
I'm not going to play anything, but I would say that you guys are probably right. Michigan State is not going to be that good this year.
And then real quick, let's talk about the bottom of the barrel, and then I'll roll in the 2 other teams, and we'll roll in the bets real quick. Northwestern, like I said, we put on the preview notes. Just a disaster. We don't stay away from it.
Tough.
Stay away from talking about them. To stay away from every single thing Northwestern. They're going to come out and upset one team next year randomly on like a windy day. That's it. That's all that's going to happen to Northwestern. Rutgers, Greg Schiano might not be the coach by the end of the year. Their defense is just horrendous. Their win total's at 4. They won 4 games last year. I could see 3-9, 4-8 again. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
And then last thing, Indiana, win total's 3.5. Absolute stay away. Stay away. They stink.
Hold your nose.
Yep. And the other 2 teams I want to talk about real quick, Nebraska, they bring in my arch nemesis, Matt Rule from the Carolina Panthers. Georgia Tech quarterback Jeff Sims coming in. Their win total's 6.5. 6.5. And a little tidbit here. Matt Rule, his first year records when he moves to a new program, when he was at Temple, 2-10. So he usually does go to really disastrous programs, but Temple 2-10, Baylor 1-11, Panthers 5-11. They weren't a disaster. He just stunk. And then second year, they have improvement. Temple 6-6, Baylor 7-6. Panthers 5-12, no improvement there. Let's talk college football. Matt Rule, third-year records: Temple 10-4, Baylor 11-3, 1-4 the Panthers. But anyhow, the thing is, he is a program builder. There's no denying it. He goes into programs and he can win you games. No, like the first year, yeah, it's gonna get ugly. He's gonna get rid of the crap. It's not gonna be pretty. That's what I kind of see with Nebraska this year. Don't expect a lot from this team. They're gonna be frisky in games. They're gonna be in a lot of close games, but second, third year with Matt Rule is then when we're going to start seeing Nebraska is back comments. But right now, not quite. I see them going 5-7, maybe at best making a bowl game.
Yeah, I agree. If they make a bowl game, I think it's a huge success for the season. I think, like you said, this is a kind of tear it down, see what you have to keep around for the future year. If you listen to this podcast regularly, there's probably been more Matt Rule slander than just about anybody, maybe besides James Borrego. But Matt Rule really got it from us the last couple of years, and rightfully so. But yeah, I'd say Nebraska in the next couple of years.
I agree.
Okay. I was going to say, Dylan, anything on Nebraska?
Not much. Nebraska was actually, I think 2021 was that year where they lost like a bunch of one-possession games. Like their margin of victory was positive, and they had a below 500 record. But I agree. Bringing in a new head coach, Scott Frost out, so we'll see. It'll be interesting, but I don't know enough about it.
And then last thing, Maryland. We kind of touched on them a little bit. I like Maryland over 7.5 wins.
Tidbit here. It's 7 on DraftKings right now. Even 7 right now. So
I'm going through the schedule. Their non-conference is an absolute joke. Towson, Charlotte, Virginia.
Screams 5-0 start. Screams 5-0, I think. Michigan State and Indiana are both horrible. I think 5-0 start for sure.
And then they get Northwestern and Rutgers. I think that's 7 wins right there. Then Nebraska. Then you've got Illinois.
I think so too.
I think this team is 8-4, 9-3 when it's all said and done.
100% agree. That's my last bet. So when we run through bets, I've already said on mine. I got Maryland over 7.5. You can get it at better odds. I think this is at minimum an 8-win team. And if you're really looking to take a dark horse that's not Michigan and Ohio State to win the Big Ten, throw $10 on Maryland, 83-1. I like them better than I like Nebraska or Illinois or Minnesota, and they have significantly better odds. So,
yeah, I think Maryland, they've actually put together a pretty good program over the last 2 years when the Tagovailoa brother's been the quarterback. I think last year they went a 7-5, 8-4, something like that. Oh, 8-5, it's right here. And Maryland used to be just like a pitiful program. I can think back 3 or 4 years ago, they used to be like where Rutgers is, where Indiana is. So I think he's done a lot for the offense. If you want a flyer for Heisman, 100-1 for him to win Heisman, I think that Maryland very well could go, let's see, 10-2 is a possibility. Not very likely, but I think 10-2 would get you in the Heisman conversation. If if Tagovailoa could put up, however you say his name.
Yeah.
If he could put up a 350-yard, 3 or 4 touchdown game against either Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State and get a win, I think that you'd have to have a serious conversation about him winning the Heisman. And 100-1, I mean, that's $1.
You could do. So, yeah, I was gonna say you could do worse things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do like him to win Heisman, and I'm high on Maryland as well.
Yeah, the McDonald's ice cream cone bet. You put $1, you know.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
like
I'm
no
gonna
calories too.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna roll through bets real quick, and then we'll get out of here. I walked in here with 1, 2. I had Michigan and Iowa walking in here. I'm walking out with 4. I have Michigan over 10.5 wins. I have Iowa over 8.5. Wisconsin over 8.5.
Yep.
I'm riding with you, Connor. I believe in it. And I have Maryland over 7.5. I'm staying so far away from the rest of the Big Ten.
I can roll into mine real quick. Like you said, I got Wisconsin over 8.5. Undecided on who I'm going to take to win the Big Ten West. Undecided. I kind of like Wisconsin still, but I'm going to stay away right now. So Wisconsin over 8.5. Michigan State under 5.5 wins. Talked about that one. Maryland over 7, over 7.5, whichever one you get. And I also like Michigan over 10.5 for all the reasons we mentioned at the top of the show.
Dylan, your picks.
Iowa to win the Big Ten West plus 250. I think that's a good one. I'm going to go Michigan to win the national championship 10-1. I'm going to take J.J. McCarthy to win the Heisman. That's 18-1. And let's see. I thought I had one more.
I'm going to ride Michigan 10-1 to win the national title, too.
It's just, honestly, as a Michigan fan, it's still, if we beat Ohio State, that's the season. But it would be really nice to have that cherry on top.
So you think if there's a Michigan Heisman winner, you think it's going to be McCarthy, not Blake Corum?
I mean, I personally, and this is nothing to back it up, I think we're going to stray away from as much running as we have now that we know that J.J. McCarthy can throw the ball. Because towards the end of the season, he was putting up pretty good pass numbers.
Yeah,
so I think we're going to be more likely to trust him a little bit more. And he can, if we use Corum, it opens up the opportunities for McCarthy to run. And Michigan's proven they don't really, they don't mind doing that. So,
okay.
And I would take, I don't think I can do Ohio State under 10.5 because at that point I think it's emotional. I don't want to do that. But those are probably my bets. Michigan to win the national championship, J.J. McCarthy Heisman, Tagovailoa brother Heisman, Iowa to win the West.
All right.
I love it. All right, that'll do it from us. Big Ten preview. That's it. We'll be back. We'll have our ACC preview. We'll have our Big 12 preview, and we'll have our Pac-12 preview, which, like I mentioned before on the SEC one, I cannot wait for the Pac-12 one. I'm very excited. ACC one I'm excited about, too. Big 12 a little depressing as a BYU fan because we're not going to be very good. But Connor, Dylan, thank you again for coming on. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, @CarterCast, on all social media, @CarterBA, @WilkersonA Dylan. at Connor_Sparrow. All that stuff's in the episode description below. Check out CarterCast.com. Once again, all the social medias at CarterCast. Subscribe to the show, rate, review, do what you got to do to help out. And we'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.